let me read the document. Mutual discussion points.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I think we're just waiting for a minute for more people to join as we've just gone live with the broadcast. So we'll start in about 60 seconds. All right, great. I think we're good to go live. First of all, thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us today for this upGrad advantEDge. It's a nice wordplay. Thanks for joining us today evening. As you know, just want to introduce, first of all, myself. My name is Phalgun Kompalli, and I'm one of the co-founders of upGrad. So started this about 5.5 years back with my other co-founders, Mayank and Ronnie. And I think we started with the vision and the mission of making high quality education accessible so that people can pursue it in a flexible, broken down manner to achieve both learning outcomes and career outcomes. And I think we've come a long way. And for the first session of this upGrad advantEDge, I think I'm really happy and I'm really proud to have Lizzie here. So welcome, Lizzie, and thanks a lot for your time and for joining the session today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Great. Just to give an introduction to Lizzie, everybody, Lizzie is one of the co-founders and CEO of ZestMoney, the largest and fastest growing consumer lending fintech company in India. ZestMoney uses mobile technology, digital banking, and AI to make life more affordable. That's their mission, and you can see how it sinks in with upGrad for millions of Indian consumers. Before co-founding ZestMoney, Lizzie worked with Goldman Sachs in London as well as with Wellcome Trust as an investment manager. In 2011, she moved from the UK to India to set up and spearhead operations for Wonga, one of the largest fintech companies in the world then. In 2013, she joined DBS and led the launch of DigiBank, India's first mobile app-only bank at that time. Lizzie also currently serves on the board of India Mart, India Quotient, and she's also the founding member of the Digital Lending Association of India and serves on its executive committee. So once again, welcome, Lizzie, to the webinar today. And as I said, we're really happy to have you here, and thanks a lot for your time.
No, thank you so much. It's something we're very passionate about, and we've been a big partner of upGrad for a long time, and I hope we get to talk about that today.
No, absolutely. And I think the topic for today's session is also very similar to your mission, which is making specializations and in general education accessible. And as you know, you've been one of our strongest partners for the last 3 to 4 years in order to achieve that vision, where we are very focused at upGrad to say that, look, we have to build world-class education products. And we know that for them to travel and actually make a difference in the lives of consumers, we need to make them affordable. And that's where very strong value propositions in terms of financing schemes are very important. And I think it's been a great partnership with ZestMoney over the last 3 to 4 years in order to achieve that vision of ours. So really excited to have this conversation with you. And for all of our audience today, we want to keep it very engaging and very interactive. So please ask as many questions as possible. The only request is please don't post it on chat, post it on the Q&A section so that I can keep track of all of them at one place and don't have to keep moving across windows. But first of all, I think one of the core missions for upGrad when we started off was I worked at Parthenon before upGrad, and it's an education consulting firm where I spent about 3 to 4 years advising big education companies and private equity funds in education. And one of the things that we had a very strong view on was the correlation between education and the economy, right? Where if you look at what we call GER, which is the gross enrollment ratio, which is how many people are actually in higher education as compared to how many people need to be there, and its correlation with GDP per capita. And I think there is a direct correlation where countries with high gross enrollment ratios, US, China, etc., have a very high GDP per capita, versus countries where the GER is low, the GDP per capita is much lower. And I think it clearly makes sense because that's the productivity of people and what the kind of skill that they're able to add. And that's where we felt that with an online proposition in India, where after the top 50, 60 colleges, there's a massive cliff in terms of quality of education, being able to work with the top 50 in India, the top 50 globally, to bring strong value propositions for learners online so that it can travel across the length and breadth of India, and we grow the GER and we grow the GDP per capita was one of our core ideas as well in terms of contribution to economy. But Lizzie, just wanted to get your view on, I think education has also been one of the strongest and the biggest categories for you in terms of lending. And how do you see that impact people's life and in turn impact the economy? From your perspective, I think that'll be very helpful if you can share that.
Yeah, no, and exactly. I think you've outlined it really, and why there's such an alignment between the two organizations. The way I see it is upGrad is basically democratizing high quality education, right? You're bringing last mile distribution to every part of this country with some of the highest quality courses in the world, right? That consumers all over the world will want to have access to. Similarly, we're just trying to democratize finance, right? I'm sure you know, but less than 30 million people in this country have a credit card. That's a phenomenal statistic. It's insane, actually. If you think about the amount of consumption and all the things that people love to do now, like travel and learn online, the fact that so few people have access to credit instruments is what we're here to solve. But specifically, and I think to your point about why is this so important now and why is this so important to India's economic future? We are so privileged in this country. We're going to be the first leapfrog economy. We're going to go straight from a manufacturing economy straight to a digital economy, right? A knowledge-based digital economy. The rest of the world is still in that services kind of bent, which is a much slower, less exciting form of growth. And the reason we get so excited about India is this is a country that can rapidly digitize every single part of our economy with very minimal infrastructure build out, right? We've done a lot of the hard work thanks to people like Geo, which has meant that we actually have the means of distribution to get this quality education and this quality financing out into some of the regions that we never would have imagined could have got there. And what that means is you can start to create, the Elon Musks of the future in small towns and cities, just like that. Now, before COVID, that was obviously our thesis, and I think we shared that. COVID has just accelerated that, and it's meant that the whole world has woken up to this and realized what an immense opportunity this is. And that just makes us so excited. So education is critical for us. It's actually one of the core pillars of our business, and our most happy, loyal, and interestingly, our most low-risk customers are those that are using finance for education.
So let me just ask you another tangential question, Lizzie. This is not on the agenda, but I think this is going to be interesting. Given you have done part of your education, at least abroad, and you went to one of the greatest universities, right, in Edinburgh. What is the kind of difference you see in the education system abroad and the education system in India? Any observations, casual observations you've made over the experience of being in India and spending time abroad?
That's not fair. Come on, I'm too old as well. I can't remember. No, so what I would say is the toughest bit is when you study in the UK. It's the Indian kids who are coming top of the class, right? So you get this perception growing up that Indian children are just uniquely genius. So that was always the reason. Another reason I wanted to work here and build a business here. I thought, wow, how does it create so many incredibly genius, smart, competent young people? But no, I definitely think think that there is a slightly cultural difference in the way that education has evolved. Certainly in my generation in the UK, it was all about no learning anything by rote, no memorizing. Everything was kind of expressive and free-forming, to the point now where there's lots of basic things that are lacking from my own education, and I'm having to learn later in life. And I definitely think there's slightly more rigid structures in India. I don't know if that's wrong or right. And if you think about, again, what we're talking about, designing for a digital economy where we need to learn really difficult things like engineering and coding, that's probably the right model, right? So I would say, you know, my university, I think I had like 3 hours a week of intense tuition. The rest of the time was all very kind of free forming. I don't think an upgrad student is having that type of experience. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think that's true. And I think one of the key things for us is we see a lot of differences. We work with both Indian universities and global universities, and we see that they have a very different take on pedagogy and learning. And one of the things that we are very proud of is while we are working with very strong international partners, and you're aware of Liverpool John Moores University, we're working with Duke, we're working with Deakin in Australia, and we've created some great programs and we've brought them to the Indian learners. And I think we've been able to create some great value propositions there. But the other thing that we're also doing is we're taking the best of the Indian education system and taking that abroad. Yeah. Where close to 10% of our learners come from international geographies where they're registering for an IIT Madras program or a IIIT Bangalore program. And that's very exciting to see that there is a movement both ways in terms of exchange. And while talking about affordability, right, one of the key things that we have realized is India is a price sensitive market and we need to get the pricing right. So from that standpoint, while we have worked very hard to make the degrees accessible. So for example, the Liverpool John Moores or the Deakin degrees that we're talking about, the way we deliver them online and the way we have structured them, they actually cost 1/10 of the on-campus cost. And you get the exact same degree and the exact same experience. The same faculty are teaching you, you get the same credential, the same outcomes, but we've dramatically reduce the cost. And obviously then what we have done is we partnered with Zest to make it even more accessible, where students can pay the fee over time and make sure that it fits their monthly expenses. So I think something that that has worked phenomenally well for us. But one of the other interesting things, Lizzie, that we internally think of is, and I mean, you could have insight because you work with multiple partners in education, is there any difference in the way people think of investing in K-12 education versus investing in higher education themselves, versus when they're spending for themselves versus when they're spending for their kids?
Yeah.
Do you see any difference and any trends?
Yeah, no, you're right. And we work with about 50 different partners across every single form of education. It's a very different conversation, obviously, at the K-12 level. It's clearly, I'd say there's an element of FOMO going into the decision, right? So it's parents not wanting to miss out or make mistakes with what they believe is their children's destiny. When you get to more of the typical upgrad customer, it's a slightly more aware and articulate conversation, right? The customer has a very clear sense of what they are going to achieve, what they're doing an ROI analysis, right? So this is a huge expense, but it's very much an investment with an expected payoff. And they're doing the maths on that. And actually, that's what we like. We really love working with customers like that, because that's where there's real value in an affordability solution, okay? And, you know, an affordability solution is actually really just very sensible financial planning, if you think about it, right? Because a massive lump sum upfront cost is not really good for anyone. You know, who knows what's around the corner? As this year has taught us, anything can happen. And if 2 months later you have an emergency expense where you really need to have access to capital, then having done that lump sum would not have been a good idea. So we love working with education partners that think with this much empathy for the customer. How do you make life easy? How do you make it less stressful? And spreading the cost is the most efficient way of doing that. The other bit that, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of students, particularly upgrad age students, like to use these affordability solutions because it's a way to build their credit score. And we see that much more at this stage than, say, the K-12. The K-12 customer is not really thinking about that. But building your credit score early in life is a really smart thing to do, right? That gives you access when you need it to whatever type of financing you need, and at much, much lower prices later on. So we're always very encouraging of, there's no stigma in using credit solutions. In fact, all over the world, it's something that, actually the good point you said, what are some of the differences between studying in, say, Edinburgh? Well, one is that you are laden with debt, right, from a very early age. So I think I had 2 or 3 credit cards while studying. You rack up a huge student debt. It's actually quite disgusting. And guess what? You actually start to become very bad with money because you're already kind of, flagrantly spending so much. The great thing in India is people are much more thoughtful. You say price conscious. I think thoughtful, I think sensible. People are very, very considerate and careful about money. They respect money. And so we love working with a partner that understands that, and then designing products and solutions that really help the customer, not just with that kind of peace of mind, but also build your credit score over time and do it safely and do it in a way that isn't overburdening.
I think that makes sense. And one of the things that we have observed is that when people think of spending in K-12 and solutions there, they think of it as share of wallet because it's going out monthly or it's a continuous expenditure for 4, 5, 10 years. Versus when they invest in higher education, it's an investment.
Exactly.
They're looking for a return. So they're happy to, while in K-12, they might not be very open to borrowing large sums of money, but in higher education, given they think of it as an investment and a return on that, we've seen that trend being more, and in K-12, obviously the repeat, because of the repeat.
Can I ask you, there's this, I don't know if you know, there's this beer, Stella Artois, and their tagline is reassuringly expensive because it's more expensive than like Heineken, right? So the idea is it's going to be better. Is there an element of that in your courses? Would people be suspicious if pricing was too low? Do you see any of that behavior?
Actually, to be very honest, people are currently suspicious that our prices are too low. So I come from the other side of the argument. Somebody in Middle East, I recently got an email from somebody in the Middle East saying, how are you offering this Deakin MBA at such a low price? How are you offering this Liverpool course at such a low price? And so there is a lot of that also happening. So I think there is a perception of price versus quality. But for us, the guiding principle is more around what kind of value proposition we can deliver to the learner. In higher education, there is this classic thing of what kind of salary increment can a person get post investment, and your pricing should be based on that so that the person can then justify the ROI. And that's what we think of, or that's one of the ways we think of doing our entire pricing of our products. Oh, great. And I think that one of the other interesting things, Lizzie, is I think we're seeing a strong preference for cardless credit and buy now and pay later solutions. So how has that played out for Zest, especially in the context of online education and the demand for upskilling?
Absolutely. So we obviously believed in this concept 5 years ago. That's where we started the company. And we have a quite controversial view, actually. We don't think credit cards are good. We think credit cards are a pretty bad product. They are actually designed to get people into debt. They're designed to make you overspend. And unless you're really anal and really sensible and put reminders in your calendar, you typically will incur extra fees than you need to with a credit card. So our whole mission was to come and make life more affordable, but without the kind of evil business model of a credit card. We never imagined that education would be a use case, very honestly. That sounds naive now in hindsight, but we just thought the obvious stuff, right? People will buy laptops, people will buy holidays. These are the things you need affordability for. Then we realized how critical a piece of any, consumption spend education can be. And importantly, many of your customers will have credit cards, right? So what's the value proposition of a product like Zest or any of these pay later options? One really key one is that you're not blocking your credit card limit. And that's something we hadn't realized that so in the UK, credit card limits can be like 5 or 10 lakh, right? It can be almost unended because the bank's desperate to get you in lots of debt. In India, they can be like 50K, 1 lakh is quite normal for someone that's, relatively young in their first job. And so actually blocking that full limit is a really bad idea. It's actually not very good as well for your credit score. And so it makes perfect sense if you think about it to use an alternative type of solution. The other thing is as well, we've done now is we don't just partner with education, we partner with all sorts of different, e-commerce, travel. We've even just partnered with Apple, and we have 0% schemes with Apple, which is very exciting. And that means that the same customer can use that same credit limit around that network and get the benefits of all those 0% deals and 0% schemes. So I think these products are brilliant. I think they're perfect for the India market. You're never going to get into too much debt. It's a much safer, much more sensible, much more thoughtful way of using credit. And as I said, you get to build your credit score, and you get really good deals and offers, because both the manufacturers and people like you are trying to drive revenue and therefore provide really, really good financing schemes. So it's definitely the most cost efficient way, but it's been booming and more than we expected. And I guess we also have COVID to thank. The last few months have been pretty incredible. And I wanted to ask you about that. It must have been insane. I know we've been really, really busy in many ways, and we've had to scale up quickly, but at a time when, our offices weren't open, and it's been really tough. And I just wondered what it's been like at upGrad. Have you guys had to scale overnight, and how do you do that remotely?
No, I think it was, at least the first 3 months were pretty crazy given the uncertainty involved. And I think we did manage to scale up pretty fast given the demand for these programs.
Yeah.
And I think there are two key reasons why we succeeded in doing that. I think the first is I have to give credit to every one of the 1,200 employees at upGrad who's staying at home, not ideal conditions to work and zone in. I think they have given more than their 100% to make sure that it all came together. And we really were able to scale all of our processes, communication, internal deadlines, etc. So I think that's something that was really, really inspiring to see. And I think the second and very important one was working with our partners. And I mean, for example, Zest, right? I remember all the back and forth where so many people came back and said that, look, I am not certain about my job anymore. I'm not certain. I had taken a 50% pay cut. I'm not going to get an increment. And that really throws off my plans in terms of the kind of loans that I have taken up. So what can you do for me in terms of moratorium, in terms of X and Y and Z? And there was a lot of back and forth with a lot of learners. And I think, again, thanks to you and some of the other partners we work with on various things like real estate, for example, right? Or I think our partners have been really flexible to help us in terms of dealing with that situation. So I think that was really helpful to make sure that we were doing the right thing for our customers. And as I said, all of us, the entire team was completely tuned to make sure that we deliver on the promise. So I think that was really exciting. And I think it has settled down. And the last 3 months have been relatively smooth, where things I think are coming back to normal. People are settling into the flow of working from home. Some offices opening up. And I think also there is a little bit more certainty around the economy and the jobs that people have. So that's also helped us a little bit in terms of driving consumer confidence to invest in a product like ours.
Yeah. What's your outlook, by the way? Because you must be asked this all the time by potential students. Do you think that the economic environment is going to be supportive for graduates over the next couple of years? And what do you think the kind of employment opportunities will be? Will it shift? Will there be more kind of interesting opportunities in technology versus more traditional services? What do you think?
I think that there will be a lot of opportunities in the digital space. And I think it was going to happen. And that's been our hypothesis for the last 5 years. That's what we've been kept harping on. Even when we launch a traditional program like an MBA or a law, we give it a very digital new age twist. Because we know that people working in the industry 10 years from now will need very different skills from what they need now or even 5 years back. So we've kept saying that. But I think one of the things that I predict will happen is that transition, instead of taking 10 years, will now take 2 years.
Yeah.
Because I was seeing a meme recently which said that who was responsible for your organization's digital transformation? Was it your CEO? Was it your CEO? Or was it coronavirus? And the answer is coronavirus. So I think what that has done is it has accelerated that digital transformation. And because of that, a lot of companies will now be willing to work from home and give employees that flexibility, which means they need to put digital solutions in place. A lot of schools, a lot of universities in our particular segment will be open to online programs. A lot of them were conservative, had a closed mindset about what can happen online. But now that all of us were forced into this, now there are a lot of glass ceilings that have been broken that, work can happen from home. Oh, people can learn online. Oh, yes, this can happen online. And I think all of that has accelerated the digital transformation. So I predict that there will be a shift to digital skills, which is going to happen. It's not happening because of coronavirus, but Corona is just going to accelerate that. And I think that's great because, as you said, India is one of the economies where I believe there's a strong opportunity to leapfrog. Like in Africa, I remember there are no landlines in Africa, right? They went from having nothing to cellular phones, direct. And I think it's one of the opportunities in India, given the scale that we have to build solutions at, and given the lack of infrastructure. I think true innovation, there's so much desperation that true innovation can come out to actually leapfrog on multiple things. And that's why I believe the next big accessible, affordable education solution, the next big accessible, affordable healthcare solution is going to come out of India and not the US or UK or Europe.
100%. Yeah, we agree. That's why we're here. What about you? You talked about this a little bit, but have you seen any shift in where students are coming from? So obviously, one of the benefits of ZestMoney is that we can serve people across the country. I think we have customers in like 20,000 PIN codes, which is not typical of a bank. And interestingly, in the last 3 months, I would say, more applications from like tier 2, tier 3 and smaller towns and cities. And I don't know if that's because things are recovering faster there, or maybe it's just that finally that kind of last mile delivery of good education has happened. But what are you seeing in kind of metro versus hinterland?
So I think it's hard for us to tease out, but there has been a slight movement towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And I say it's been hard because we have also constantly added more programs to the portfolio. And given the kind of programs we have added and given the kind of pathways we have created, they have a certain inclination towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities. The other thing that we have done, as you know, right now, because of Corona and because we know that people were a little circumspect about investing, we said that, look, you can start any of our master's programs at 10,000 a month. So it will fit your expenses, but at 10,000 a month, you can start and do a world-class top 20 online MBA at a global level. And I think because of that affordable solution, we have been able to penetrate tier 2, tier 3, and we've also seen for new LLM programs going into tier 4. So there's been a definite shift. And one is obviously given the coronavirus situation, a lot of students who travel to metros to study on campus have not been able to do that. Second, as I said, we have added new products and we've added options to make them more affordable and accessible. So that has improved our penetration in tier 2, tier 3 markets in India. Yeah. Great. I think one of the other key aspects that we've been discussing, Lizzie, is around accessibility, right? I mean, one of the biggest things for us at upGrad has been how do you use technology to really drive accessibility of education, and how do you make sure that we can deliver that at really high quality? I think what we have seen, and this is my personal experience, and if there's anything you want to add, would be great to hear your thoughts as well. But for me, in education, technology is not really visible on the front end, but there is a lot of work at upGrad that goes on at the back end to make sure that we're able to deliver the kind of product and services and the kind of quality that we deliver. Just to give you an example, what happened initially when we started a data science program was we have a peer-to-peer discussion group where students ask questions, other people respond, and eventually upGrad responds saying, okay, this is the right answer. So there's a lot of interaction. Similarly for case studies, where students have to solve a case study, they have to upload it, and they have to get personalized feedback on their particular submission. A lot of this was manual initially, but what we have done over time is we know that, look, right now we're in the 25th cohort of data science, right? 24 cohorts have happened before this, batches have happened before this. And the questions that are going to come in this batch are not going to be remarkably different from the other ones. So how can we use NLP to make sure that once a student asks a query, we can reduce human dependence?
Yeah.
Right? Similarly, on case studies. So if it still involves human intervention, but instead of taking 15 minutes, can it take 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So how can you use technology to improve and make these processes very efficient and less human and reduce the human dependency? I think there's a lot of work that we have put in on our end. And I'm sure it's the same case with you guys as well in terms of the entire processes. So would be happy to hear your experience and how you're leveraging technology to make sure you're able to scale and provide accessibility to people.
Absolutely. It's so similar, actually. It's remarkable. I think that, again, on the front end, people probably don't realize the amount of investment that has gone into the completely automated backend that we've built. And like you talking about MLP, we've always been an AI first company. And we said the only way we can really scale to these 20,000 PIN codes in India, and the only way we can actually serve people with a real-time credit decision in a matter of minutes, not days or weeks, which is what a bank would do, is if we completely automate the process and use AI to do that. The reason banks take time is there's a huge amount of human effort involved on the back end. So that guy that comes and gets you to sign all those pieces of paper, guess what? Those pieces of paper then go to another person who processes those pieces of paper, and they go to another person. It's a very cumbersome operational process on the back end when you look at how credit is really delivered all over the world. By the way, India is not necessarily any worse. We felt that there was so much you could do to speed that up using AI, and not just make things faster, but make the whole experience better and fairer. Because when there's a human brain involved in making a decision, just like say an admissions policy, right, into a course, it's not always going to be reliable. There will be human bias. And especially in this country, we felt that that was leading to wrong credit decisions in many cases. And so we wanted to create a model that was self-learning, a machine learning model that could get better and better every single day based on the repayment data of previous customers. So what that means is we don't judge customers based on things like, where they're from, how old they are, and what their credit score is. Frankly, credit score is not one of the most predictive pieces of data these days, believe it or not. We use far, far, far more interesting data sources and this model that's constantly learning and improving. And then we apply AI to all sorts of other parts of the process, which very few people have done, again, in this country. So silly things like most people don't want to get a phone call to remind them to pay their EMIs. They'd rather get a message, but we know at what time of day and in what format the message should come to be most convenient for the customer, for example. Our models teach us that. So we never stop applying AI to every piece of the process. And actually, our biggest challenge is hiring good people to come and help us build those things. So anybody here on this call that is looking for a new challenge, please get in touch with us at Careers at ZestMoney. We have a huge team. We even have an AI team who sits in the middle of our tech team, watching every process and seeing if we can apply more AI to speed it up and make it more innovative. And so we love people who are passionate about data science and AI, which I know is a very popular course for your students.
So the next thing I want to ask you, Lizzie, was given now location is not a barrier anymore to avail financial services, right? With mobile data solving for a lot of the reach issues. What steps are you taking at Zest to create an impact on the scale of the operations, especially with EdTech being a driver where we talked about tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, looking at EdTech solutions.
Yeah.
And with all of this happening, I think there is a huge opportunity. So I just wanted to understand how you're thinking about it at Zest.
Yeah, and it's back to technology, right? So what technology has done, and obviously specifically the smartphone, is it's just removed a lot of the infrastructure and physical barriers to delivering any product or service. In financial services, that's even more critical because, again, remember all that piles of paper and then people saying, submit income proof or give me, salary slips. All that physicality we've just removed from the process because technology can do that. India is also a really advanced country, believe it or not, in financial services infrastructure. I know we don't always realize that sitting here, but you would be shocked how cumbersome things like payment systems are in the rest of the world. So the fact that we have platforms like UPI is a game changer in the world of things like EMI, because what it means is customers can repay really easily, really quickly, really cheaply without having to set up, some kind of cumbersome, direct debit or check which is, in the US, most people pay their EMIs by check. And that's just a crazy system, very, very cumbersome. And so India has some phenomenal technology infrastructure that makes both last mile distribution, but also things like collections and how we can service customers so much easier, touch of the button, using a mobile phone. So the sky is the limit. We actually think now there are so many more innovations that could happen in the financial services space. And again, in India, it will be more advanced faster because we have this amazing leapfrog opportunity where entire parts of the country have not yet been kind of poisoned with things like credit cards and personal loans and all those things that we don't really like. We're getting lots of questions I'm seeing on the Q&A, and we're not answering them very quickly. So should we take a couple of them?
Yeah, questions. The first one is interesting. It's for you. I was just reading this. It is from Dhruv. Ma'am, just a small question. How exactly do you get an idea to open a startup which offers financial services faster than a credit card company in like just 20-25 minutes? How do you do that? Because it is really phenomenal.
Oh, that's nice. Come and work for us, Drew. We just saw a really obvious opportunity, actually. It sounds really simple, but it was such a big white space. And we saw a classic kind of chicken and egg problem, which was that banks were really not willing to do this type of lending in this country. But the demand was really, really high. And the problem is in India, if you don't have a high CIBIL score, banks won't really look at you. But to get a high CIBIL score, guess what? You need to take a loan. So we wanted to create a way to make much, much easier, smaller, more kind of bite-sized, very light feeling type of loan products. India was the most obvious market, not just because it's the biggest, but exactly this phenomenon that we're talking about today. We believe that the Indian consumer is the most digitally savvy in the world. Believe it or not, people are very, very open to adopting new technology, trying out new products. And that's why we thought this was the best country in the world to try something like this. And yeah, it's been a bigger success than we expected. So we're just really, really grateful for everybody that's helped us do that. Thank you. Nice question.
Thanks, Lizzie. The next question is from Manish. His question is, it's about a question. I think this question is more to do with online MBA versus traditional on-campus MBA and the difference in perception for employers. I can talk from my experience doing this over the last 5 years. We have launched the global MBA products about 12 months back, and I think they're doing phenomenally well. But I think what will be a better example is, let's talk about the data science program that we launched 4 years back. When the first batch was going through the program, we had similar concerns around, okay, what will be the employer acceptability of this program? And we worked really hard to make sure that employers are very closely involved with the program. So that's where you will see that almost any program that upGrad runs will have industry partners. Could be Grameener, Uber, Genpact, Cognizant, Flipkart. We bring these folks in to help us design the curriculum, to develop part of the content, and to deliver these lectures and case studies. What happens as in that process is that they build confidence in the program, saying that, look, we know that this is a world-class program. And if students are going through this, I'm very happy to hire people from this. So I think it's an exercise of credibility building. And I will not say that, look, it's an easy exercise or it'll be on the same on-campus credibility level, because see, the on-campus thing, credibility is built based on exclusivity in most cases, where it is restricted to 100 people and it's like being part of an exclusive club, and that's where you get the credibility from. But that's not the idea or vision of upGrad. We want to be able to do that at scale, and for us to do that at scale, the only way to do that is to make sure that our learners have very strong learning outcomes based on which they can impress employers. And it's a constant exercise, and as I said, we work with the industry very closely, starting from design and delivery of the program to understanding what kind of skill gaps are there, and then finally providing those transition opportunities to our learners. And as I said, for our data science program, we have seen some amazing results where the entire Big Basket data science team, almost 80% of them are from upGrad, where their default, their go-to default for hiring is our data science program. And there are many such examples that I can give where students have made strong transitions. So, and Lizzie, I would like to ask you this question from one potential employer standpoint, right? Because you said you love people from artificial intelligence. How would you look at somebody who has done an on-campus program versus an online program? And how would you honestly evaluate two different profiles coming to you?
Honestly, I think, I mean, and maybe the last few months have actually solidified this view. But honestly, we would see no difference today. I think what we've all realized that, you know, in the old world, we thought, yeah, but it's not quite the same. You know, it's so much nicer if we can all physically be present and do things together. But guess what? Even in the way we run our businesses, we've realized we can sometimes be more efficient, more effective when we work remotely. Takes a bit of time to get used to, but I can tell you today, most of our teams are working at like hyper productivity. So I think this period has helped us realize, you know, the future is going to look very different. And we finally opened up a way of thinking about education that I think was, you know, it was a bit risque before, and now it's going to become mainstream. And I think it's going to become mainstream all over the world. This is not an India phenomenon. It also means that, you know, think about it, employers now are actually employing people all over the world. So we've always had a very open-minded approach to where people want to sit geographically. We've had developers working in Eastern Europe at some points in our life, and it's been completely fine and seamless. What we've realized now is it's happening the other way. So, you know, Western companies are hiring really smart engineers in India and letting them stay in India, right? Keep them in India. Why not? It's perfectly viable now. And so if they're going to basically work remotely for the rest of your life, of course you can be educated remotely. I don't think there's any distinguishing factor. So yeah, it's brilliant. I think COVID's really helped with acceptance. And even in more traditional sectors, maybe like banking, I think we're going to get there now.
Great. The next question is from Aryush. And this was, I think, from one of the earlier discussions we had around upGrad programs and international students. His question is, do you think you can have different pricing for international markets? And would that be helpful? Actually, that is a great point, and that's something that we have just started exploring, where we are working with universities, and most universities that do online programs or even on-campus programs, for example, would have domestic pricing versus international student pricing. And that's something that we have just started off a few months back, and I think the response to that is good, where obviously the affordability of all of these markets is different. The expectations are different in terms of delivery. So we're trying to put that together to make sure that we can offer it at differential pricing. The last set of questions is from Ritvik and somebody anonymous saying, what is the importance of the degree or the certificate that you get in this day and age? I mean, Lizzie, please feel free to add to this, but I think my point of view, and we have had a strong experience with this at upGrad, where we have launched both university programs and non-university programs. So we said for people who do not care about the degree can do this. But there has been an overwhelming preference. Overwhelming meaning not even 75-25, it's 99-1, right? Overwhelming preference for something that has a university credibility attached to it. Wow. And I have done some theoretical reading on this, although I have not gone to any school. I've just Googling, and I think there is this very famous economic theory of lemons, for which somebody got a Nobel Prize, saying that, look, it is very important to have something which has strong and easy signaling value when there is information asymmetry, right? If you think of the employment market, there is very strong information asymmetry because the candidate always knows more than the employer. And all candidates want to look great, so they will put something on their CV which somebody can review for 30 seconds and only know that much. So if you think of the dynamic between the employer and the potential employee, there is very strong information asymmetry. And in all of these cases of information asymmetry, a strong signaling value is very important. Where there is a common standard that people can trust. This is very famous in used cars in the US, for example, where a good car is called a peach and a bad car is called a lemon. And it's very hard to distinguish for a potential buyer because everybody will say that, look, my car is great, just get a paint of coat done. You can never really tell if the car is good or bad. And that's where some of these certified pre-owned cars became so famous in the US, because that was the standardization and that was the signaling. And that's very similar in education as well. Where if you go and tell somebody that, look, I did something from IIT Madras, there is an automatic signaling value that it brings. And I think it is so ingrained and it is so subconscious that people have a very natural preference to it, both students and as well as employers, and that still holds. And that's where we have seen that, and we have accepted the fact that, look, students are also looking for it. So why not deliver that value proposition? And sometimes some things we've realized is that universities have very strong subject matter expertise. And they have done some very deep research on projects. Like, for example, our partnership with IIT Bangalore, the kind of faculty that are involved, Professor Dinesh, Professor Raghavan, they have built the Aadhaar infrastructure that you see in India. They have a project for building the same thing, just these 2 or 3 faculty members in Africa, in 2 or 3 countries. So right now they're building this for Morocco, and then they'll build it for others. So their understanding of big data systems, of how to use technology to build large scale solutions is incredible. And the kind of value that they bring is also reflective of what we are talking about when it comes to signaling to employers in terms of what you have learned and what your capability is. And that's where I believe that the certificate or the credential from the university is going to be relevant for the foreseeable future. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I don't know if you thought about
Is that true irrespective of the domain, do you think? Are there specific courses? And actually, generally, what have you seen in terms of subjects especially over the last 6 months? Has there been any kind of evolution? What's really hot right now? What's everybody wanting to get certificates in?
So I think there are 2 or 3 key areas that have always remained of very high demand. So data science, AI, machine learning were always pretty hot. Recently, we've seen that networking is one area that a lot of people have asked us for. Then there's 5G that is picking up, still niche, but picking up. And we have launched other programs in the areas of design, in the areas of IoT, cybersecurity and cloud computing are picking up. So digital marketing has always been strong, but it's kind of flattening out. So I think those are the areas that we see where there is a lot of demand.
Interesting.
I think there are a couple of other questions from David. What about AI powered marketing? I think, David, all marketing these days is AI powered marketing, to be honest. Google, you go on Facebook, I think everything is powered by AI.
Don't think there are any humans involved anymore in most digital marketing. So yeah, that's.
The next one is from Ritik. It's incredibly great to have such a great opportunity for learning. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ritik. That's really kind, and I'm very happy that you're enjoying the learning experience. Next is from an anonymous attendee. How does upGrad assess people with respect to entry criteria to say an MBA program? Is it the same on-campus program? No. So I think our philosophy for entry is very different. We are not a selective institute, and we have no interest in being a selective institute because there are no capacity constraints for us. We are interested in being an eliminative institute, where we do not want to get people into the program where we feel they cannot do justice to the program or the program can't do justice to them. So if you can't add 2 + 2, we won't take you into the data science program. But we won't not take you into the data science program because we only have 100 seats. As long as we feel like, look, you have the basic quant ability, the basic analytical ability, the basic programming ability to make a good data scientist, and we can work with you over the next 12 months to deliver on those outcomes, we're happy to take you, and we don't have any capacity constraints. Universities, on the other hand, come with a very different thought process. They're not eliminative, they're selective. They start by saying that, okay, I have 50 seats on my campus. So how do I fill it with the best 50 students possible? And that's where their entry criteria are different sometimes from the entry criteria that we have online. The next question again is from do you think there will be more employment, especially in the IT industry post-COVID era? I think there will be. And as I said, but what I am confident of is that they will be in different spaces and domains. I think for people who are trained and skilled in new age technologies, I think the opportunity is very ripe. And I think there will be a very, very strong demand and growth in employment for those technologies. Yeah. So I think we can move on to the last part. I know we have about 10 minutes left. And the last part, and this is the theme of the session as well, was specializing. And this is a very generic discussion that we have. And I think, Lizzie, we spoke about it earlier also in one of the conferences that Zest organized in Bangalore. That do you think moving forward, employers will value specialists more, or do you think they will value generalists more? And how should people think about it? Would love to get your views on that.
Yeah, it's actually a very hotly debated topic. And there's a really good book that the name has just escaped me that I read recently on this topic that changed my views. I would say in a rapidly digitalizing world, there is a need for specialization. And look, you never want to hire a generalist machine learning coder, right? You need this person to know exactly what they're doing. And in fact, we sometimes get frustrated when people have done, far too many of the sort of hot topic of the day. So they've got like a digital marketing course and an AI course. It's like, focus, be good at one thing. However, I do think that we sometimes over specialize early on in our careers, and there's nothing wrong, especially in the first few years of your career, in having a slightly broader, open-minded approach. And I think the other thing that's really, happening, and you're seeing it every day, is education isn't just a one-time event in your life, right? We are constantly relearning and re-educating ourselves. I've just done a course in something, you can guess what, I won't tell you, to get certified in something completely different to what I do every day. And we've now offered that up to our whole team. So we have an allowance for everybody in the team to go and study whatever they want through, we actually work with upGrad to offer that. And we encourage people to do things that are not necessarily linked to their day job, because what we believe is the brain is actually more fungible and more open to learning when you're learning something that's different to what you do in a routine setting. So I would say, don't think of it as generalist versus specialist. There will be different times in your life where you will evolve that course. But what you must always do is keep yourself relevant and open for learning. And so if you start like as a generalist, constantly be, re-specializing, I think is the right way to think about it. I mean, if you're like the CEO of a bank today, right? Your education was 30, 40 years ago. You have so much to learn. And the wonderful thing is now that's really, really easy to do. And so I think, we have to have a slightly more parallel track to both our careers and our education now. What do you think?
No, I completely agree with you. I think for me, we keep talking about, whenever somebody asks me this question, I give a very cliched answer and tell them that you should be a T-shaped professional. And for me, what that means is that you need to have a good breadth of understanding, and it need not be in depth, right? You need to have a good coverage across to build your holistic understanding of HR, finance, XYZ of various technologies. But I think there is one thing that you should go very deep in. And you can pick whatever your passion or your interest is. But that doesn't mean that you're blindsided to everything else, because I think just having that holistic view of everything else will even help you figure out better and more collaborative solutions in your area of expertise. So what I tell people is have a generic worldview, but specialize in one thing where you can really do some cutting edge work, keeping in mind everything that's happening around you and not being completely blind to it.
It's really good advice. I can tell you as well, we have like 120 engineers that work for us. The developers that really excel and have a phenomenal career and are critical to our business are the ones who understand business as well. So no matter how good you are at coding, if you don't understand the basics of, how do interest rates work, what's a debit versus a credit, you're not going to be much use in a business, right? At the end of the day, a startup is a business. And so having that breadth, and especially just general kind of business and economic understanding, I think is critical for everybody. It's almost a kind of duty in the modern world.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. Just one final thing, Lizzie, I wanted to touch upon was, I think everybody is trying to cope with the new normal, and consumer preferences are constantly evolving. But one of the things that we're seeing is that consumer preferences around availing cardless credits are developing. And as in most other evolving preferences, right? The view is divided if the consumer habit in this case is here to stay for the long term, or is it a short-term fix that people are looking at? And what is your view on this in terms of the future of financing?
Yes, no, I do think that affordability solutions and just enhanced credit products are here to stay. I think that, believe it or not, India was very underpenetrated until recently. We have some of the lowest borrowing rates in the world. What that means, to your point, people are very sensible, very cautious, much better at saving than spending. But that's changing so quickly. Our economy is moving so fast. There are so many new opportunities and things that people can do with their wealth, including education. But to do that, sometimes you do need credit products to just smooth the flow. So we're definitely seeing a sea change. It's almost a generational change. So the way that people in their 20s and 30s think about finance and financial services is completely different to the way their parents do. But the way that they're thinking is actually incredibly sensible, incredibly thoughtful. And then the other thing that's happening in this country is as I said, the infrastructure is really evolving at such a fast rate, but we're going to see some new products and new services in this country that the world hasn't seen before. There are platforms like Account Aggregator being built right now. What that means is you as a consumer, at the touch of the button, could supply your personal data to anybody that you wanted to use a financial product from. And that means they can make much more personalized, much more tailored, much better quality financial products for you. Again, this will be first in India. Nowhere in the world has the infrastructure that I'm talking about. And that means that it's kind of the sky's the limit. The amount of financial innovation that we're going to see in the next decade in this country, I think is going to top the charts. And we have a consumer base that's ready, that's online, that consumes more mobile data than anyone in the world. You know that, right? The Indian consumer consumes, I mean, it's like multiples more than some European countries. So yeah, we are super excited. We think fintech is probably going to be one of the biggest contributors to the economy in the next decade. So if I was somebody graduating right now and thinking about which industries to go into, I would say anything at the interface of technology and financial services. That's where all the big shifts are going to happen.
Great. And one final thing, Lizzie, given we have you here for another few minutes, I think one of the very important things and the work that you do at Zest, you can be the bellwether for the economy and where it is going, right? Because you understand the consumer trends and whether lending, buying, demand, and all that is coming back. So what kind of revival are you seeing in consumer demand? And the associated question to that is what is the role of the digital ecosystem that you see in reviving demand and boosting the economy, and how crucial will that be?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are seeing a lot of green shoots, I'll be honest. Since probably middle of June, we have seen not just demand and consumption coming back, but actually, to your point, less of the income shock. So more and more customers who are feeling confident about the future, not worried about their income, not worried about salary loss. So that's a very, very positive trend. We do think that India could actually be one of the economies in the world that could bounce back the fastest. And that's because of this digital initiative, right? We're already able to do so much online. We actually have one of the most digital governments, believe it or not. So much can be done, including things like tax filings, online already today. Many countries around the world are not in that situation. And if this pandemic is stop-start and we go back into lockdowns, their economies will really, really struggle. So we're actually quite optimistic about India, always have been in the long run, but even in the medium term, because of our digital DNA and because of, folks like you providing that last mile digital distribution, things can continue as normal. And we see a really, really exciting, few years ahead, actually, especially for people coming out fresh today with this kind of digital DNA that even we didn't have when we were studying. So very, very, very excited and optimistic about the future.
Great. Thanks a lot, Lizzie. Just a couple of questions that I would like to address before we close is one of the folks asking us, okay, how does upGrad and its courses help make leaders of young people? I think, look, it's a difficult question to answer, but I think one of the things that we try and do in our program is not just teach you, okay, how do you code for this particular situation in Python? That's not the idea. The idea is to say that how do we constantly challenge you and help you break some of the glass ceilings that you have in your head so that you're open-minded and you're confident about tackling a new problem. And I think that mindset and that framework is something that we try to equip all of our learners with. And even if you do a data science program or you're doing an MBA program, whatever might be the case, I think leadership is more an attitude than a skill. And that attitude comes, as I said, with having that confidence, having that aggression, and having that collaborative skill with people. And that's something that we try to embed in the program to make sure that we can challenge you and we can push you in that direction to be a great leader. But there's a lot of work involved from your end also to make sure that you're able to get there. And we see that some people can do that very effectively and some people just struggle. But as I said, in the program itself, we have embedded various elements where the idea is not, as Lizzie said earlier, rote learning or just learning coding, etc. But to make sure that whatever you learn, we are able to build a mindset where you can try and apply that to larger problems and constantly challenge yourself to push the envelope. The last question, he's asked this twice, I'm going to cover it, is from Ritik again. What's your idea of how online learning will evolve in the coming years? And I think one of the things that I personally believe, Ritik, is that lifelong learning is the mantra for the future. And just, I mean, if we look at the careers that our parents have had, right? My dad worked in the same job for 35 years. And I'm sure most people would say the same thing, or my mother worked in the same job for like 20 years. And there are very few shifts in jobs and careers. But if you look at the new age, the average is people shift 8 to 10 jobs in their career, and they make major career shifts 3 to 4 times in their career, right? Which means that people need to constantly learn and upgrade themselves in that sense to make sure that they can pursue these relevant, upcoming, and exciting opportunities. And that's where we believe that gone are the days when you can go to college and then say that, look, I need not learn. And learning always need not be structured, like coming to upGrad and doing a program. There are various ways in which you can learn. We're just one form which can help you. But I think for us, there are a lot of options. There are a lot of structures. There are a lot of frameworks using which you can learn. upGrad is just one of them. But I think you constantly need to invest and have an open mind about what you need to learn to make sure that you're relevant in the current day and age. And in that thought process, lifelong learning is very important, where for us, the vision is to say that somebody comes and does their BTech in computer science from upGrad from 18 to 24, joins Infosys, becomes a software developer, works for 3 to 4 years, comes and does an MSc in data science from us and becomes a data scientist at Amazon, works 3 to 4 years, comes back, does an MBA because she wants to become a manager. Then she becomes a manager at Amazon, again continues to work for 3 to 4 years. And by the time she's 60, she would have done at least 4 other certificate programs in deep learning, in HR excellence, in 4 or 5 other things that she finds relevant for her to make sure that she does her job really well. So I think that's the kind of vision that we have, where we're able to build lifelong learning opportunities for people. And that's, I think, the direction that online learning is going to take in future. So with that, thanks a lot, everybody, for joining the session. We've just about done with that time as well. And once again, I would really like to thank Lizzie for joining the session today and for sharing her thoughts with us. Thanks a lot, Lizzie. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. It was really interesting. Thank you so much. And great questions from everyone on the audience.
Great. Thanks a lot. And again, as I said, I think in this partnership, we're really excited that upGrad and Zest are working together very closely to provide a very important solution in terms of giving access to affordable education to a much larger set of people, where upGrad is working with universities to put that value proposition in place. And we are again working with Zest very closely to make it accessible and affordable for a much larger set of people than it otherwise would have been. So thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks, Lizzie, once again for your time. Take care and see you soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.